Hello, myself Sunil Ramakrishna here. Basically, we are discussing one of the topic that is city creation. So, one of the person told that basically that future prime minister is going to die. Future prime minister is going to become this. This is the future prime minister. This is the future president. Basically, these all are basically decided. So, what they are doing basically, how up to what level basically they are. One of the person asked literally the question basically, if one chief minister is basically counting basically that one plane crashed, two plane crash, three plane crash, four plane crash, 100 plane crash, 200 plane crash of American people basically. And in this basically lots of Indian are also basically there. So what is the situation basically? That means basically they are hating the America, or basically what basically? They don't like American basically. That is the question now basically. It's a business basically. The killing the people basically in the Himalaya basically and Mount Everest basically. That is very dangerous question basically. That is actually very dangerous question basically. One of the person asked literally basically. They basically hates America, or basically that's their rules and regulation basically, that if anybody want to become the chief minister, he have to do this all thing basically. It was very dangerous basically. One of the person asked the question basically that basically ऐसा है क्या है मतलब, that if you want to become chief minister basically, then you have to count, if you want to become the chief minister of Uttar Pradesh, then basically you have to count 1, 2, 300 plane crashed, 200 plane crashed, 300 plane crashed, 500 plane crashed in Himalaya. So one of the person told that basically if Uttar Pradesh basically, just taking as an example, basically really basically that is basically happening, that basically need to check basically, because this is also one disease basically which is going to generate basically. That's why basically, because Apple equal to each and every incidence basically. So it might possible that basically in Corona basically few data basically they can't able to find basically. Why? Because this type of data basically never comes into the picture only basically. But the disease basically keeps on circulating in the body basically, and they basically keeps on circulating in the blood cells, and then basically it converts to the new disease basically. Then basically you will never able to solve the corona disease only basically, because this all hidden data basically you don't have na basically. That's why basically, so you will never able to solve the problem only basically. Unnecessary you basically are doing giving 100%, then also you are not able to solve. Why? Because you don't have the data only basically in front of the government basically. There is no like this type of data only basically. But chief minister of Hindustan basically, they have that data basically. That way I, when basically I was in Himalayan, and basically for this many time basically, that time basically this many plane basically got crashed basically. So one of the person told that basically, if this type of thing is basically happening, then basically why the America is not taking any action basically against India basically. Then one of the person told that basically America is a friend basically of Hindustan basically. America basically is a friend of Hindustan basically. So basically one of the person told that is American president is also basically involved in this basically, the plane crash. That means George Bush basically was involved in this basically. That was very dangerous basically incidents basically. This basically connects to the world war basically. That basically is America is doing this type of incidents, and America basically government knows that basically, that thousand planes basically are getting crashed, and unnecessary basically they finished the Iran and Iraq basically. So one of the person told that basically, is this basically the enemy of Muslim group basically? Somebody want to finish the Muslim basically from this world basically. That basically connected to that basically. Why? Because unnecessary Iraq, Iran basically country basically got finished. And like this basically Laden basically was not there also basically. Laden जैसा कोई था ही नहीं. There was no like Laden basically. That was actually the plane basically which was diverted to the Himalaya Mount Everest basically. and this basically connects to the world war basically. And lots of people says that basically if the few basically group might have tracked this also basically, and in this basically the America basically has came into the world basically, that they are basically doing this type of task basically, and they basically are in this basically they are getting the money from Indian group basically, which is basically having the data of bank detail basically of each and every people basically, who are basically, if the plane is basically getting crashed basically, then basically the entire family is basically getting end basically. So like this basically the data entire money basically is getting diverted to that account basically. So one of the person told that basically America is also involved in this basically. That means the World Trade Center basically, which happened basically that time basically, that was basically what actually that basically was question basically, because this happened basically when George Bush basically was the president basically. So George Bush group basically want to tell in front of the world that basically something wrong is happening, or basically his enemy basically was Bill Clinton basically. He basically got the information that basically the this type of thing basically is happening basically. And both basically 100% basically I am telling you, both exist. Mark my word, both exist basically. Both basically exist. So one other person told that yes, yeah, basically both exist basically. Because in future basically somebody is going to track this basically. Because corona disease when basically came, that time basically the medical industry basically, that are basically this group, that are this group basically. Then basically we will take basically one more thing basically, future incident going to happen. From this basically they can track, because whenever they are going to create this basically, they will be going to add this also basically. In that basically they will not going to add that incident basically, which is basically the plane crash happened basically, but really basically it has happened basically. But nature is going to create the disease basically, that is basically which is basically not going to track by the medical industry. That is the corona vaccine group basically, they will never able to track that basically, that in vitamin C basically they will never able to add that basically this many planes are basically getting crashed. So one of the person told that basically, is political groups are basically handling the medical industry, or basically somebody told that also basically, that is the army group are basically handling the medical industry, and vice versa basically, medical industry is handling the army group, or basically the medical industry is handling the political group basically. So one of the person told that basically, if this type of thing basically is happening, and one of the person told that basically, is this basically the plan of Muslim group basically? Then one of the person that basically need, and few people say that basically Saudi Makkah basically, where basically the Saudi Makkah is there basically. Do you know basically how many people basically might be dying there basically? Few people says that basically daily basically 500 people basically dies there basically in Makkah Medina. So what actually that is basically? One of the person asked the question also basically, what actually that is basically? Why basically 500 people basically are dying, putting their legs in front of uh, uh, to top of the each and every people basically, and like this basically they are walking, and then basically they are killing the people basically. What actually that is basically? Then that is also basically there. Like this basically, how many places basically are there basically, which is basically in front of the world basically, that is hidden basically. So that basically will be our next topic basically in next video basically.